Welcome to the third and final part of my discussion of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which I'm going to talk about the way that traces of the epic can be found in other texts, in different parts of the world, and at other points in history. I suggest you watch and listen to parts 1 and 2 first if you haven't already done so. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like and sharing it with somebody else who might be interested. Welcome to the third part of my discussion of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this section I'm going to talk about the relationship between Gilgamesh and other myths. And I want to start by talking about other myths from ancient Mesopotamia, because myths kind of have families where you have this cast of characters who overlap. You could again think of the Greek myths because they may be more familiar to people. You get the same characters, the same gods appearing in different stories. And I think it's also interesting because we see overlaps between the myths of Mesopotamia and later Western myths in different cultures. So I'm going to begin by introducing the Mesopotamian creation myth. And this is the story of creation. When skies above were not yet names, nor earth below pronounced by name, Apsu, the first one, their begetter, and maker Tiamat, who bore them all, had mixed their waters together, but had not formed pastures, nor discovered reed beds, when yet no gods were manifest, nor names pronounced, nor destinies decreed. Then gods were born within them. So we start with a situation of sort of primordial stuff, matter, okay? We just have waters mixing together, and the gods, the first gods, Apsu and Tiamat, are embodiments of these natural phenomena, fresh water and salt water, okay? And it's in this mixing that they give birth to other gods. So again, we get a family tree, again, like the Greek myths, okay? So we have this primordial state which is associated with water. Then they give birth, and we get this new generation of gods who are actually stronger than their parents. The children gods actually begin to annoy the parents with their clamour. They're making noise. I don't know if any parents might identify. And actually, Apsu's response is he wants to kill his children, but Tiamat refuses to do so. And Ea, one of these younger gods, actually discovers the plan and kills Apsu and his advisor, Mumu. And then again, we get a disturbance, okay? So we get this Marduk, and he's disturbing Tiamat and the other gods. Elevated far above them, Marduk was superior in every way. 4 were his eyes, 4 were his ears. When his lips moved, fire blazed forth. Anu created the 4 winds and gave them birth, put them in Marduk's hand. My son, let them play. He fashioned dust and let the whirlwind carry it. He made the flood wave and stirred up Tiamat. So you can see how wind and storms and water are associated with this god, Marduk. Okay. And eventually we get this conflict between Marduk and Tiamat. And I'm going to give you the description of Marduk essentially killing her. The Lord Marduk spread his net and made it encircle her. To her face he dispatched the Imhulu wind so that she could not close her lips. Fierce winds distended her belly, her insides were constipated, and she stretched her mouth wide. He shot an arrow which pierced her belly, split her down the middle and slit her heart, vanquished her and extinguished her life. And then it's from this that the world is created. The Lord Marduk rested and inspected her corpse. He divided the monstrous shape and created marvels from it. He sliced her in half like a fish for drying. Half of her he put up to roof the sky, drew a bolt across and made the guard hold it. Her waters he arranged so they could not escape. In the great shrine, Eshara, which he had created as the sky, he founded cult centres for Anu, Elil, and Ea. So we see how he's created the land, the sea, and the sky, this sort of division. So the primordial matter has now split into earth, water, and the air or the sky. And then within this, we have temples for the pantheon of gods. So in other words, the world is now taking shape. And we can see significant similarities between this movement from primordial chaos into these divisions and into specific gods who are embodiments of particular natural phenomena and particular qualities. Okay, we see this very clearly in the Greek myths. So I'm quoting here from Hesiod's Theogony. Verily, at the first chaos came to be. So again, we've got primordial matter. But next, wide-bosomed earth, the ever sure foundations of all the deathless ones who hold the peaks of snowy Olympus and dim Tartarus in the depths of the wide-pathed earth. And Eros, love, fairest among the deathless gods, who unnerves the limbs and overcomes the mind, and wise counsels of all gods and all men within them. From chaos came forth Erebus and black night, but out of night were born Aether and Day, whom she conceived to bear from union in love with Erebus. And earth first bare starry heaven, equal to herself, to cover on every side, and to be an ever sure abiding place for the blessed gods. So I think very similar in many ways. We see the world taking shape, we see the gods taking their place within this newly created world, and of course we have generations of gods, and with each generation they come to represent sort of more and more specific phenomena, or in fact specific but abstract qualities as well. And we can see actually the myth has travelled here. The Epic of Gilgamesh is Mesopotamia, which, as I said, is sort of around what's known as the Fertile Crescent. So the eastern end of what's now Turkey down through Iraq into Egypt, this kind of area, down through the coast of the Mediterranean in that area as well. And it's moved to Greece, of course. And of course, Greek culture then moved to Italy. The Romans took Greek culture pretty much wholesale and renamed bits of it as well. So moving forward a bit, I think we can also see Gilgamesh pop up much further afield, and this is interesting to me. So I'm sure you've heard of the Arabian Nights, or the 1001 Nights, which is a collection of stories from the Middle East and in fact South Asia. So these stories themselves, yes, by South Asia I'm talking sort of India, Pakistan, that area. So actually the Arabian Nights are sort of spanning quite a big area themselves. Now, these stories were originally compiled in around the 8th century CE and then added to in the 9th and 10th centuries. The Arabian Nights, famously, there's a frame tale, an initial story from which we go into the other stories, okay? And the frame tale is you have this young woman, Scheherazade, who's the daughter of an advisor to the king, Shahryar. Okay, Shahryar's wife has been unfaithful to him, so he's embittered against all women, and he marries a new virgin every night, kills them the next day so that they can't possibly cheat on him. Nice guy. And Shahryar's advisor, who's sourcing these virgins, runs out eventually, so his daughter Scheherazade volunteers to marry the king. And she's got a plan. Her plan is she begins telling a story every night, but finishes before the end, so Shahryar keeps her alive until the next day in order to hear the ending. In this way, she keeps telling stories to keep herself alive. And then, of course, the stories she tells are the stories we get within the Arabian Nights. So there's one story I want to mention. This is the story of Bulukiya. Bulukiya finds a scroll containing instructions on how to find a magic ring that will grant power over all living things and that will give immortality. This may sound like the Lord of the Rings, but that's not where I'm going with this, although I think that's interesting in itself. Bulukiya goes on this quest, finds the right location, says the spell he's supposed to say, but accidentally says it backwards. So it doesn't work and he doesn't get the ring. He fails. But he learns of a magic juice that will keep him alive for long enough that he can witness the coming of the Prophet Muhammad. Okay? And Bulukiya and his companion Afan capture the Queen of Serpents, and they make her tell them how to create the juice from a magic plant. But they're defeated when they attempt to obtain this plant. Okay? So very clear echoes of those later stages of the Epic of Gilgamesh, with these attempts to secure immortality and these two failures to do so. Okay? But of course here it's reframed within the context of the Islamic story, they're waiting for the coming of the Prophet Muhammad. And I've just shown you how we see echoes of the Epic of Gilgamesh in an Islamic religious narrative already, and of course with the reappearance of the serpent, you may have been thinking of the Christian narrative and the Old Testament as well. So of course we see echoes of that. In fact, actually, the creation myth, we see echoes of the Mesopotamian myth as well. Now, the very first quote I started with in the first part, there's a reference to the deluge, to the flood. So if we look at the Old Testament, Genesis 6, verses 4 and 5, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So actually, this emphasis on generations we also saw in Genesis. And of course, God famously gets upset. God saw the wickedness of man. God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord said, I will destroy man who I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So of course, then we get the flood, okay? Now the flood's been mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh. We go now directly to the section where it's mentioned. And it's in the section where Gilgamesh meets Utnapishtim, who's going to give him the secret to immortality. So here we have their meeting. Said Utnapishti to him, to Gilgamesh, let me disclose, O Gilgamesh, a matter most secret. To you I will tell a mystery of the gods. The town of Shuruppak, a city well known to you, which stands on the banks of the river Euphrates. This city was old, the gods once were in it, when the great gods decided to send down the deluge. Then he relates the instructions he was given by the god Ea. O man of Shuruppak, son of Ubar-Tutu, demolish the house and build a boat. Abandon wealth and seek survival. Spurn property, save life. Take on board the boat all living things' seed. So very clear parallels with the story of Noah in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And of course, the serpent, the snake, appears a number of times. So parallels also with Genesis, with Adam and Eve, and with the fall of man. You could think of also the fact that the courtesan is sent from Uruk to tame Gilgamesh, who up to that point, tame Enkidu, not Gilgamesh, who up to that point is kind of running wild with the animals. So echoes of Adam and Eve there as well. So I think very interesting that we see echoes, resonances from the Epic of Gilgamesh in these other later stories that move across time and space, but of course get used and adopted in slightly different ways. But it does show us that elements of the Epic of Gilgamesh is still kind of echoing through various cultures. So the significance of the Epic of Gilgamesh, then we can overstate. And I think a very important text to kind of understand if you want to see the roots of different modern cultures. So I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to the Epic of Gilgamesh. I will continue this series on classics of world literature. We'll look at other influential texts from around the world in the future. So please stay tuned in. If you enjoyed this content, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share the video with people who might be interested. Thank you for listening.